So to all of my subscribers, this is not a Luna related video, and I will be back with a Chew analysis video next week, or maybe even earlier, so stay tuned. So I have been listening to the Clancy album a lot recently and started to look a little bit deeper into the lore, which I didn't really do since the Trench era. Now I did still remember that I had a theory about there being two different protagonists to this story, i.e. Clancy and Tyler. Now you might say, but Tyler is Clancy. We can see this in the I Am Clancy video where he calls himself Clancy. But in my opinion, this is kind of a lie. Let me start from the beginning, since in this case it does make a lot of sense to look at everything that has been released officially through the Dema.org page and so on. In the Trench era we get a whole bunch of lore, that there is this place called Dema. The whole place is walled up and there are 9 bishops who run the place, that oppress their people and have the power to take over people, but only when they're already dead. This is called seizing, and seemingly Clancy, our protagonist, can be seized without being dead. Our protagonist also being a citizen of Dema, and he tries to flee this place multiple times. This is basically the groundwork of the lore for anyone that needed a refresher, but I can also recommend these videos if you have no clue what I'm talking about. These videos give you a great and detailed overview of the lore, so if you're not familiar with the lore, maybe start with these videos. So let's take a look at the informations that were released through the Dema.org page that might be linked to my two protagonist theory. By the way, I'm using the Fandom page of 21 Pilots, since the fans did a really great job at archiving everything that they released. So first of all, in this cheetah gif that fans found, we got the text, "You still don't know his real name, do you?" when you take away the name Nico from the letter 2 times. But I always wondered if this was in relations to Blurryface's name being Nico / Nicholas Bourbaki, or if it was meant to connect to our protagonist Clancy, having a different name maybe. A real name that we don't know. But I think that it is more likely about Nico, since this cheetah gif gives us the name Nico, which, at least in my memory, is the first time that we get to know Blurryface's real name being Nico. In the 07 Moon 18 letter, we get a detailed prescription of the events from the jumpsuit MV, but from Clancy's perspective. He watched a fearless Tyler run through Trench, and the banditos watched him from the cliffs, when suddenly Nico shows up on his horse. Clancy believes that Nico saw him, but he seems to ignore him mostly. Then Tyler stands completely still when he gets smeared by Nico. And Clancy mentions how Keons seems like a nicer person, since he is gentle and warm, while Nico seems entirely different to him. Clancy, unlike Tyler, is scared and thinks a lot about his decision to leave Dema. He runs away as far and as fast as he can after Nico took Tyler away. But he starts to think about his escape maybe being the wrong decision. At least Dema felt familiar, and now even though he met other people through the banditos and Tyler, he feels more alone than ever. The next letter, unlike the letters before, is written with a typewriter, since Clancy is back in Dema. He seems to still be thinking about the relationship of him and Keons compared to Tyler and Nico, and he still wonders if he should escape or not, even calling Dema home and saying that Nico could have just been saving Tyler by bringing him back. Clancy felt relief when Keons found him and described their meeting as comforting, since Keons put his arms around Clancy and said, "Clancy, child, let's go home." Once he returned back to Dema, he feels torn between these two worlds, unsure if the bishops are friend or foe, and likewise with the banditos. So in the Trench era, we see that Tyler and Clancy are two separate people, since Clancy explains that Keons is his bishop, while Tyler's bishop is Nico. And we know that this is true, because if Tyler was just imagining this Clancy character, then how would he be able to know so much about Keons? That Keons is like a warm and kind person. He wouldn't come in contact with Keons since he is not his bishop, and we see in the Psy era that Keons is in fact fighting against the other bishops, showing us proof of him being a better person than the others. But how would Tyler be able to know this? And another detail that we learn in this era is that Clancy seems like a very timid and scared person, while Tyler is fearless and takes action. And through the MVs in this era, we know that Tyler joins the banditos, something that Clancy couldn't do, since the banditos never tried to get closer to him and only watched him from afar. Now after the Trench era followed the Scaled and Icy era, the Psy era. Scaled and Icy being an anagram for Clancy is dead. In this era we got the 03 Moon 17 letter that was released over 3 years after the last letter. The file name references isolated, like in scaled back, and isolated. This letter again is handwritten, And this could just be me, but it seems to be a different handwriting. If we compare this letter's handwriting to the other letter's handwriting, you can see that this one is more like an ornate sans serif, while this one is really like a sketchy serif handwriting. Looking at the way they write the word Dema makes this pretty clear. To say it in easier words, this looks like a woman's handwriting and this looks like a man's handwriting. And in a way it's interesting because this looks like a very spontaneous person that quickly writes something down, almost like taking quick notes, while this is the handwriting of someone that takes their time to write clear and detailed notes and letters, and it looks almost like typewriter letters. So this person probably was taught how to write this clean. And remember that while this letter seems to be talking about Clancy's experience after being back in Dema, it could also be about Tyler, since they both were taken back pretty much at the same time, and they would have both been punished for trying to run away. So their experiences could have been very similar in this situation. And in the letter there is this one sentence. 3 of them were unknown to me, but one was clearly Keons. I knew his voice. His voice? Clancy knew a lot more than just his voice. He had a really close relationship to Keons, so much so that he felt relieved when Keons found him, and Keons called him his child while hugging him. Even if Clancy had recognized Keons because of his voice, he wouldn't have said it like this, you know? I had recognized my mother because I knew her voice? Doesn't this sound super strange when you're talking about a person that you know really well? Now, quote-unquote Clancy states that the bishops wanted him to produce propaganda for them, since he had garnered notoriety for escaping and probably other things as well, since it says schemes and outbursts. Maybe Clancy did some stuff that we don't know about, since there were more than 3 years in between this and the last letter. It could be that some time passed in between the Trench and SIA era. But in any case, this doesn't really sound like Clancy, who escaped in a time when nobody would notice. So why would he, of all people, be known for his schemes and outbursts? The only people we see do crazy things in Dema are the banditos together with Tyler. They break into Dema to get Tyler out there, and they leave something behind for the bishops to find. Again, Tyler being fearless and wanting the people of Dema and the bishops to know that he escaped, while Clancy is the total opposite. Now, Clancy knew Keons well. On the other hand, the bishops probably weren't like super familiar with Clancy, and neither would they have been with Tyler outside of Nico, probably. So what if Clancy got into a lot of trouble for his escape and schemes, and Keons decided to cover up his doings by keeping Clancy safe in his district and letting somebody else pay the price for Clancy's disobedience? So maybe he took Tyler's side and granted him his one wish, his wish to write something down again. I mean, through this letter we know that he got to write something down in secret without the other bishops knowing, since this letter is handwritten, unlike the last letter of Clancy that he wrote while being in Dema. Tyler only had to play the role of Clancy to the other bishops and create propaganda together with them, and in exchange he gets to create something in secret for himself again. And now you might wonder, wouldn't the bishops find out eventually that Tyler is not Clancy? Since Nico was very familiar with Tyler, he would have been able to tell that this was all a hoax, but sometimes 3, sometimes 8, not once were there all 9 present. He was never there. I would have felt it if he was. Nico was never there. He never could have uncovered the lie, since he was never there, and the I would have felt it if he was there implies a deeper connection that would fit with Tyler, but surely not with Clancy, since his connection was with the Bishop Keons, who was present. And another important detail that can be overlooked easily, I was asked to name it. Why would Clancy call his work scaled and icy, an anagram of Clancy is dead? Clancy would not write this, since this would have no meaning, since Clancy isn't dead. And on the other hand, it would lead to people giving up hope, since Clancy is admired as a rebel by the other people in Dema. So why would he hide this lie for people to find, and to then make them hopeless again? But on the other hand, if Tyler wrote this and called it scaled and icy, then this would be his way of putting in a secret message for us and the people of Dema. He had to write this album. He was forced and they watched over him, taking away his ability to write freely. The only choice he got was to name this creation. So he took his chance to tell the truth to people, to finally make them realize that this is propaganda, that the bishops are lying to them, and that he wasn't even Clancy. This would make the people solving this puzzle realize that they shouldn't fall for the traps of the bishops. And also to Tyler, Clancy was dead. I mean, why would he have to act as though he was Clancy if not to cover up something big? Something like Clancy not being alive anymore, not being able to pay the price for betraying the bishops. And a cute little detail could be the fact that this far Tyler never had dyed hair during any era. It was always Josh. Yeah, this could just be something that they wanted to try out, but it still feels like this might have been a way for them to distance this character from Clancy and to make us wonder who exactly are we following. In this case then, the pink-haired Tyler is really Tyler, and the black-haired Josh / torchbearer is Clancy. Now we get this line that is crossed out. I knew those weren't the real bishops on that ship. Well, why wouldn't the real bishops be on the ship, since they of course should be present at the annual assembly of the glorified? Unless they knew something was up. We see Keons use Trash the dragon to attack the ship, so Keons might have had the idea to kill the other bishops. Maybe this was partly Clancy's idea of how to end the tyranny of the bishops. Unlike Keons, the other bishops seem to be cold and uncaring, making Dema a dark place that people want to get away from. Maybe Keons really was different. He really felt close to Clancy, and maybe Clancy got through to him with this multi-step plan. Step 1. Let Tyler write propaganda. Since Clancy knew that Tyler was a brave person, he probably knew that he would be able to sneak in something true into the propaganda. Step 2. Then they could convince the bishops to do the assemblage of the glorified on a ship, and since Tyler did such a good job with the propaganda, he would be present as well. Step 3. Keons could try to kill the bishops by sinking the ship, but if this wouldn't kill them, then, step 4, they could at least bring Tyler to the island that would turn him into a weapon. Either way, the bishops would die through the hands of Keons and Trash, or through the hands of Tyler with his newfound powers and the banditos. But we saw that the bishops knew of Keons' betrayal, so they never went on board the ship. They stayed behind and let Keons believe that his plan would go smoothly, until he sank the ship with Tyler on board, and then they killed Keons. In this way, both Tyler, who they believed to be Clancy, and Keons would be gone, meaning that the bishops finally are free of the troublemakers. But just like Keons had planned, Tyler was saved by Trash and ended up on Voltsoy, on which he would be able to find the nets and through them the power of the bishops. Because in actuality the bishops are nothing special. They only use the powers of the net antlers, and now that Keons is dead, one net would regrow his antlers, which then Tyler could use to destroy the other bishops and make Dema a better place. But Keons and Clancy knew one thing, that Tyler is scared of Nico. That even though he seems fearless, when met with the eyes of Nico, he would freeze again. But more on that later. Also, the letter ends with I must go, instead of the usual cover me of Clancy, showing again that this person is outgoing and fearless, unlike the scared and inward Clancy. The next thing we got was this image that explains the powers of the bishops. This power is called seizing, and it is explained as soul movement. You can only seize a body that has no soul in it anymore. The glorious gone are just available vessels for the bishops to seize into. Seize available vessel at Voltsoy Eastern Cove. Intercept bishops. Glorious gone equal available vessel. Bishops control the available vessel. Intercept and seize. They will make you a weapon. This feels like something Keons has written down for Tyler to find. It explains that the bishops get their power granted by these net antlers, that they can only seize dead people, that he needs to go east to find the nets on Voltsoy, and like we heard many times before, this island would make Tyler into a weapon, but more so that the nets can grant Tyler the power of the bishops, making him into a weapon just like the bishops are. So insinuating these powers being something wrong and evil. Keep this in mind when thinking about Tyler being the quote-unquote savior of Dema and the protagonist in the story. Now this letter was released on the same day that the Outside MV was released, and it shows us some insights into Tyler's mind. He wonders why no one but him can use the Antler's powers, again underlining how he was turned into a weapon more figuratively. Since he is the only one that can wield this weapon, he is forced to be the one using these powers. So he feels like he has become nothing more than a weapon, being the only one that is able to wield this weapon. He basically had no choice. He could only give up or become a weapon. Since it is also insinuated that Tyler was seized, even though he was still alive, he seems to be something special. Maybe only the people that can be seized themselves have the power to become a weapon and seize others. But this also reveals something way more important to us, the fact that Tyler can be seized, and that people that are able to seize could communicate to him in this way. Keep this in mind for later. Also, Tyler references the image that we have talked about earlier, referred to as available vessels, is an excerpt from the image's text. This means that this was indeed a letter to Tyler, so that he would be able to understand these powers, meaning that this was likely a letter from Keons, since only the bishops themselves would know about these powers, their origin, and how to use them. Then it could also mean that Keons knew that the other bishops would kill him. Maybe this was all part of the plan. After all, it seems like only once one of the bishops died would a Ned regrow his antlers and grant this power to another person. It would make a lot more sense this way, because Keons doesn't seem like the guy to be tricked this easily. And he mentions that he is with the torchbearer, which now we know that he wasn't with him. But why would they show it in the MVs and tell us in the letters then? I refuse to believe that this means nothing and was just a plot twist for plot twist's sake. I think that this could be Clancy helping out Tyler through seizing him. Yeah, I know that this is a little far-fetched, but in the letters he says, "This whole time I thought I was battling my inner self. Was I actually under assault from something else? Someone else?" This does indicate that the bishops liked to stay in his head and mess with him. Maybe they wanted to let Tyler suffer until he ends himself in order for there to not be any competition. Somebody that is able to be seized maybe would be able to seize themselves, and so they wanted him to stay small and controllable. Now, on the other hand, this could also insinuate that this torchbearer is actually not the real torchbearer, but someone messing around in Tyler's head, making him imagine this friend and helper. And he only disappears once Tyler meets the real torchbearer, so what if Clancy also has the power to seize people? Maybe he helps out Tyler on his journey, and to make Tyler trust him, he took on a form that he would know and maybe even trust. The form of a bandito, one of the people that tried to save him from Nico. How else would the torchbearer have known where to go and what to do? This plan his imaginary friend made up is just accidentally adding up with the plans of Keons? Nah, I don't believe it. I think Tyler is talking to Clancy when he is with Torchbearer, and that he helps out Tyler because that is all part of his plan. It would also add up nicely with the characters themselves. Tyler, the fearless guy that doesn't really plan out things, being recaptured by Nico since he just ran a straight line through Trench, versus Clancy, an anxious but excited guy that wants to know more about everything, but is too scared to go through with things by himself. We will destroy and rebuild. Though it's been years since he last spoke with them, I hope they have not lost faith in the Torchbearer's plan. But how would any of this have been planned? If my theory is correct, then this is just the biggest tease in the history of teases. Torchbearer has been with the banditos all these years. It was Clancy that talked to Tyler through the form of the Torchbearer that made Tyler believe that Torchbearer had been separated from his people for years. And nobody could have planned this is kind of funny when it seems like this was all planned from the beginning, you know? Even if my theory is wrong, it's just really funny to read when you know that the real Tyler has planned this out for years and now is writing, "How could anyone think of a plan like this?" And also it feels like a dead giveaway that he insinuates that Torchbearer has been the one with the plan, when in actuality it seems like he is only another pawn in this 5-head level chess game. And on the other hand, it also is difficult to believe that Tyler got this plan from a person that he made up in his mind. Would be a little weird, because that would mean that he does know all of these things when he really couldn't have known it, you know? If that was a plan made up by Tyler's mind, then why did Tyler know about the Nats, where to find them and how to use their powers? Now we finally get to the letters from this era, and we get to what makes me believe that Tyler, who goes by Clancy now, knows that the real Clancy is still alive. One of the letters that was sent to fans had the Easter egg still alive in it. But again, who is dead? Well, Clancy is dead was the message of Scaled and Icy, but we see Tyler in the Trench, SIA and now Clancy era, so why would they have to spell out to us that Clancy is dead when we see Clancy alive in the MVs? And why would they have to tell us that Clancy is not dead if we see Clancy in the MVs? Well, it is because Clancy is not Tyler. After Keons took in Tyler and told him to go by Clancy and act as if he was the real Clancy, Tyler of course had to think that the real Clancy is dead. Why else would he have to play the role of Clancy? So when he got to name the album, he sent out the message, "Clancy is dead," as in, "Dema is lying to you, I am not Clancy." He wanted to spread the truth through the propaganda of Dema that he had to create. He thought Clancy was dead, and now we are told that he is not dead. Maybe this even is a sign of Clancy himself to us. He would still be somewhere in Dema hiding, waiting for his moment to strike. But in the meantime, he could be sending out these messages. "Hey guys, don't give up hope. We are so close. I, Clancy, am still alive." And we saw Torchbearer was never actually with Tyler, and Tyler probably realized that the Torchbearer he was talking to was just somebody seizing him again. So maybe Tyler, who now knows that he was the pawn of Clancy, changed the plan. Since we see a lot of burning and fire in the promotional material, what if we now have two Clancys fighting for the same thing but in two different ways? The real Clancy wants to burn this place down and free the people of Dema, but the Tyler Clancy wants to reform the state of Dema. He even calls some of the people in Dema his friends in the I Am Clancy video, so he seems to be way more connected to the people in Dema, and he now has the powers of the bishops in himself, so he could win this fight for the people in Dema. I mean, he calls himself a weapon, for crying out loud. Maybe could it be that Tyler is still fighting for the right thing, but this kind of evil side in him is taking over now? Maybe his blurry face side? What if he now wants to become a bishop himself, since at the end of the Paladin's Tray MV he confronts the bishops instead of burning the place down? And then after fighting the bishops, only he and Nico are left. So what if they are now getting closer to one another as well? Similar to the way that Keons got closer with Clancy, maybe now Nico gets closer to Tyler and convinces him to stop the fighting and to come over to his side. These are just some ideas I'm throwing around since we have not seen the ending to the story yet. But something that is quite interesting to me is that the letters that were sent out are about Dema looking for someone that sent out top secret information through dema.org, so that could be the real Clancy. He might be still in Dema hiding to destroy Dema from the inside, sending out these messages with the truth to hurt Dema and make the people distrust the bishops. Hence why they use the zombies to fight in the Paladin's Tray MV instead of using fresh vessels. Maybe it is because there is nobody there anymore to support the bishops, nobody that wants to die for their cause anymore, which then could also explain the cracked look of Nico's makeup. Maybe the bishops rely on their vessels for strength, but now that the people stop trusting them, they become more and more powerless, showing in their appearance and explaining why it was so easy for Tyler to defeat them all. And this could be underlined by the next letter, another letter sent out to people, but this time it is a letter from Clancy that is written with a typewriter, which was also used for the last letter from Clancy in the Trench era. The Clancy letter he wrote with a typewriter after he returned to Dema. And this does feel like the real Clancy, since the first thing he says is, "I'm not as scared as I used to be." This does fit in nicely with the old Clancy letters that imply that he was a very scared person. This Clancy now talks about his journey as if he was still with Tyler and Voltsoy. I believe that this is because he is still seizing and advising Tyler here. He still acts as the torchbearer, since this letter is from before he crossed the Paladin's Tray, so this is playing out before the Navigate MV, in which Tyler learns that the torchbearer that he was with wasn't actually real. Also in this letter, Clancy talks about burning down Dema to the ground again. Together we create an inferno. Though this is probably meant to describe the banditos burning with passion to destroy Dema and build up something new, but still there's this fire theme. And this might sound a little delulu, but this letter doesn't insinuate that Clancy himself has these powers. Let me explain. I no longer feel powerless. I can outsmart them. This is obviously about Clancy. He was a really scared person and seems to be smart. He used the I to describe himself. And since the first 3 sentences start with I, it feels very intentional to then follow this up with "this new power of psychokinesis worked." This new power, not my new power. Which is then followed up again with an I in, and I believe it can work again. So intentionally or not, this creates the feeling of these powers not being Clancy's, since he basically starts off every sentence with I, and just this one doesn't use any pronouns to mark if this is actually about Clancy or not. You know what? I'm going to correct myself. This definitely has to mean something. This letter basically is, I'm not scared, they're mystery fates, I no longer fear powerless, I can outsmart them, this new power, and I believe it can work, I stand here, their compass lies, mine doesn't, I've left embers, I only hope, together we create an inferno. Why would they build the letter up with I as in Clancy and them as in Dema, and then all of a sudden introduce a this as in that thing instead of my or their thing? Well, it is because these powers are not actually Clancy's, but they are Tyler's. Also, if Tyler were to be Clancy, then why would Tyler write with a typewriter while he is traveling to Dema? Who would have a typewriter to go with them on their journey? To me, it makes more sense that Clancy, who is in Dema, is writing down these things while looking through Tyler's eyes, metaphorically and literally. And with this letter again, there's an emphasis put on flames, and that there's more and more rebellion even inside of Dema. Probably through Clancy spreading letters all around Dema, which also explains the hidden sentence, "Follow the torches." If he hides these sentences and letters he spreads throughout the city, then if somebody finds a letter, they might follow the lead of the hidden sentence, and the rebellion can grow. since we did see banditos take rebellions out of Dema once in the Nico and the Niners MV. It could be that they do this regularly, and that the people in Dema just have to follow the light to find a way out there. And this is also underlined by the next letter explaining that Clancy found a way into Dema that the bishops wouldn't find out about, and how he now tries to recruit people that want to change their lives as well, people that haven't given up on hope yet. And the hidden word flyby could insinuate that he found this through seizing one of the vultures, since we see the vultures being seized in the Paladin Stray MV, and there is the vulture on the Trench album cover, as well as the vultures being around the banditos in the Levitate MV. So there definitely is a connection of the rebels and the vultures, and Clancy could be seizing them to contact the banditos and to look over them. So if Clancy used the vultures to fight against Dema, then it could turn the vultures from a symbol of oppression into a positive symbol of Clancy watching over the banditos. And this could also explain why the vulture is in the banditos yellow on the Trench cover, since they can also be used for good, for the rebellion, you know. Then the yellow vulture could be a symbol for Clancy, the blue trash on Scaled and Icy is Keons, and now Clancy is on the Clancy cover in the form of Josh, the torchbearer, together with Tyler in the form of, well, Tyler. This is also the first album that has both of the members on the cover, so this could have a deeper meaning if you ask me. And the last part of this puzzle to me is the digital remains PDF, and also the banner on Blurryface's Twitter page that had the right in front of your eyes with the counter-rotating arrows on it. And this feels like a reference to me as well. It is as if they were advising us to look at everything from a different perspective. Or maybe the fact that we have seen two perspectives all along and that now these two perspectives would swap. Now this sadly has to become a two-part series since there's just so much more in the digital remains, and then I also wanted to explain how I imagine the story to end, and this script is already 9 pages long, while my digital remains analysis is also 7 pages long. And since I want to get my theory out there, I'm just going to make another video explaining everything that is in the digital remains PDF. I know this has been a really long video, so thank you for watching until now, and I would appreciate it if you write a comment with your thoughts on my theory. And if you liked the video, you can like and subscribe, and I will see you next time with the part 2.